If you're dreaming about moving to Portugal before retirement, you're in the right place.
A few years ago, we were in your shoes, Googling, researching, trying to figure out if there was really a way to make this wild idea happen.
Originally, we thought we would move to Portugal after we retired, but the more we talked about it, the more we realized we did not want to put off our dreams of living abroad. So we unretired.
Yeah, we found a way to design our life here in Portugal that was different than just retiring. I mean, Portugal was the dream, but we found that by building flexible income that we could live that dream here in Portugal much, much sooner.
So today we're walking you through the exact steps that we followed from that first maybe could we moment to actually making the move and living here on the Silver Coast of Portugal.
And just so that you know, we are not realtors or real estate experts or relocation people. We're just a couple who made this leap, and now we try to help people who want to make that leap as well. And if you're interested, we do have a Moving to Portugal course, and we'll leave a link in the description below.
Yeah, that's really the guide that we wish we had, but we're going to cover a lot of ground in this video, so let's get to it.
So first up, it's research and planning. Now, Portugal is small. It's roughly the size of Indiana, but when you're trying to figure out areas that you may want to live, it actually feels huge.
That's right. There are so many different regions, and they're all so different. Lisbon, Porto, the Algarve, the Silver Coast, Central Portugal, Northern Portugal, Alentejo, and then you've got the islands, the Azores and Madeira, which can feel like completely different worlds in the best way.
We always tell people to write down the things that matter to you most in terms of where you want to live. And for us, for example, we wanted to live near the ocean and have weather that had moderate temperatures both in the winter and in the summer. And so that helped to narrow down our list fast.
Yeah, we actually almost ended up in Madeira before we landed on the Silver Coast. We actually have a whole video about why we ended up choosing the Silver Coast over Madeira. We'll leave a link to that if you want to watch that.
So beyond location, we needed to think through how we were going to support ourselves here in Portugal. Now, I work remotely for a US company. Dawn has an online business that she runs from here, but we needed to think very carefully about how we were going to manage our earned income.
Which meant that we needed to look into those really fun things like how will I be taxed on income, and how do we set up a business here in Portugal, and does Matt's employer need to set up a presence here in Portugal? All that really fun stuff.
And there are real considerations here that matter. I mean, it depends on your visa type, depends on how you're earning your income, and whether you're working for yourself or for someone else.
Now, we do go deeper into this in the course, but just know that if you are moving to Portugal without retiring, if you're still going to be earning income from anywhere in the world, this is definitely something you want to do your research on before you decide to make your move. This is not an area where you want to wing it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it may seem overwhelming, but it's actually doable to sort of navigate this through. And actually navigating through these things is very much an unretirement lifestyle.
Yeah, that's right. We weren't quitting work. We were just changing where and how we work. And that actually changed a lot of the equation. And we just needed to get some clarity on what that would look like for us here in Portugal.
That's right. And one of the other considerations is your visa options. There are several visa options here in entering Portugal, and trying to figure out the one that makes the most sense for you is an important step in this process.
And then comes budgeting. We actually recommend 3 different budgets. There's a scouting trip budget, there's a moving budget, and then there's a first year budget.
And we include budget worksheets in the course, but so many times in the process of us moving and sort of going through all of this, we found ourselves sort of surprised by different things, different expenses that we weren't expecting. And so we've included those things in these budget worksheets. If you don't use the worksheet, that's okay, but just make sure that you give yourself enough room for surprise expenses.
Yeah. Now, if you can take a scouting trip, definitely do it. We do know that there's people who move to Portugal without a scouting trip, but we recommend this because there are some things when you're moving to a new country, any new country, listen, there's going to be a lot of things that you just can't Google. For example, a place that looks really good on paper may not actually feel that great once you get there.
That's right. Now, you've got a couple of options. One is that you can hire a relocation team who can help you sort through the different places, and then once you're here, can take you around to different places, or you can do what we did, which was have a plan before we ever came here and then rent a car and do it ourselves.
Drive all over.
Drive all over for sure.
Yeah. Now, we loved the freedom of being able to just hop in the car and drive wherever we want and explore all of the different areas that we thought would work for us. But it is true that there are many places on the Silver Coast that we ended up not seeing at all until after we already moved and bought property here. So I would say that, especially if you don't have a lot of time, hiring a relocation company can make a lot of sense, but it will be an investment.
So whichever route you take, there's a couple of things you're going to want to get settled before you ever do your scouting trip. And I'd say the most important thing is to get your NIF. Now, a NIF is the equivalent of a tax ID number here in Portugal, and it is required to enter into any contract, even contracts as simple as getting a cell phone. But certainly, buying a home or setting up a lease, you're going to have a NIF. And this is important because securing housing before your first visa appointment is a requirement.
Now, if you do check out the course, just know that we've got a full scouting trip checklist in there so that you can avoid any last minute scrambles and you know exactly what it is that you need before your scouting trip and what you want to do during your scouting trip.
Well, so once you've found your area and you've done your budgeting, it's time to apply for your visa. Now, again, like so many other things, this may seem overwhelming, but it is doable, especially if you stay organized.
Yeah, we ended up doing this ourselves. You can hire somebody, but just know that most of the time that this takes is gathering paperwork, and you're going to need to gather that paperwork whether you do it yourself or whether you hire someone.
Now, listen, if your situation is complicated, look, it may make sense to hire a professional, but if it's a simple situation like ours was of just moving here on a D7, doing it yourself is eminently doable.
Now, one heads up is that the visa application process is completely backed up and backlogged at the time of this video. So we recommend setting up your appointment, which is the very first step. Set that up earlier in advance than you think you need to, because it may take quite a bit of time to actually get that first appointment.
Yeah, even when we did it, to get that first appointment, the schedule online was 3 months out in order to set up our first appointment with VFS, the organization that you apply through.
And it's even more backed up now, yeah. Once your visa paperwork is submitted, it's time to get serious about planning your move.
That's right, and you've got a lot of decisions that you need to make. Decisions like, am I going to move my furniture? Am I going to be moving a car? Am I going to be buying all new things? Am I traveling with a pet?
Yeah, absolutely. And just know this process is not for us control freaks. There's going to be a lot of things that are beyond your control. So for example, your visa approval. If you're coming as spouses like we did, your visa approvals may not come in at the same time. In fact, Matt got his about a month after I got mine.
And if you're traveling with pets, I mean, there's a whole set of requirements that actually get quite stressful, but a whole set of requirements around traveling and bringing a pet here into Portugal. And we have a whole video on that here.
If you plan to be working remotely or running a business, this is the time to start talking to somebody about setting up your legal entity, setting up an employer of record if you need to, and hiring an accountant.
Now, if you're moving to Portugal to retire, you may not need some of those last steps, but if you are unretired or planning to earn income while you're here in Portugal, you do need to take care of that.
So let's talk about those first 6 months of living in Portugal. This is a critical transition time, and it's going to take a lot of time to figure out some basic things, like figuring out the internet or where the pharmacy is.
Well, look, it's almost like having a second job while you're trying to work at the same time. There's so many new things, and it's a whole new context that just takes time to figure all these things out.
It's very different than just vacationing or even slow traveling in a place. You're actually rebuilding your entire life.
Well, that's the beauty of unretirement, though. You're not pressing pause on things. You're actually building a life that is in alignment, more in alignment with your goals.
One thing that helped us feel more grounded more quickly was the expat community. They are a wealth of information. So joining a Facebook group even before you move or attending meetups, we also have scheduled a lot of coffee meetups, and this is a really great way to just really feel like you are figuring this stuff out faster. It will take a lot more time if you try to do it all on your own.
Yeah, and we've met a lot of great people that way. I mean, that's how we found out about the medical concierge. That's how we found our vet. That's how we find a lot of great restaurants.
Yeah, it's true. So if you feel like Portugal is calling your name, but retirement still feels years away, just know there is a way to make it work without putting your dreams on hold.
And you don't have to retire. You can just choose unretirement. Build a flexible income, move abroad, and start your life here.
And if you want to start making the dream of moving to Portugal real, we recommend our online Moving to Portugal course. In there, you're going to find a step-by-step plan, visas, healthcare, moving, all of that. We've also got lots of helpful worksheets and planning tools and checklists to help make this process less overwhelming.
We're going to leave the link below, but whether or not you choose to buy the course, we're rooting for you.
That's right, because life is too short to keep saying someday.
That's right. See you next time.